This wasn't a coincidence or some kind of mistake. In fact, back in the 1990s, about 1,000 of these trucks came to this spot to dump the waste from an orange juice factory. Even though what was going on was crazy, the trucks weren't doing this at night.
20 years ago, workers dumped 1,000 tons of orange peels into a bare patch of land. At first, it looked like a smelly mess, but today...
And so, 16 years after that whole orange waste dumping, a team of researchers from Princeton University checked out the damaged area.
That same place has turned into something unbelievable. What could possibly grow from heaps of rotting fruit? Could waste really bring back a forest? Join us as we uncover the stunning results of this experiment. The forgotten orange peel experiment that changed a forest. Many years ago, long before anyone thought of using orange peels as a solution, a piece of land in northwestern Costa Rica was in serious trouble. This land was part of the Área de Conservación Guanacaste, a national park famous for its incredible range of plants, animals, and ecosystems. But not every corner of the park looked as magical as visitors might imagine. Large parts of the area had once been cleared for cattle ranching. The thick forests were replaced by pastures, and cattle grazed heavily on the grasslands. In a short time, the soil grew weak, the grass disappeared, and the trees vanished. What remained was barren ground, so dry and compacted that it could hardly support life. Bringing back trees and greenery seemed like a dream too expensive to pursue. Reforestation on such poor soil would require vast amounts of money, time, and effort, resources that simply weren't available. Yet hope did not disappear. Two ecologists, Daniel Jansen and Winnie Hallwax, both connected with the University of Pennsylvania, had spent years working on conservation projects in Costa Rica. They were passionate about restoring the land, but understood that the usual methods were not practical on such a large scale. They needed something bold, cheap, and effective. And as fate would have it, opportunity came rolling in the form of oranges. Not far from the park, a new orange juice company named Del Oro had set up shop. Like every juice company, it produced mountains of waste every day. For every liter of juice, there were heaps of leftover peels and pulp. The company needed a way to get rid of this waste without spending heavily on landfills or other disposal methods. Tico Fruit was not pleased that Del Oro had gained free waste disposal and good publicity through the partnership. They launched a legal attack, accusing Del Oro of polluting a protected ecosystem and breaking national regulations. The case quickly grew into a heated public battle. Environmental agencies became involved, media outlets picked up the story, and the once quiet experiment turned into national news. In 1998, only 1 year after the project began, the matter went to court. That was when Jansen and Hallwax came up with a striking idea. Why not use this waste to heal the damaged land? In 1996, they struck a deal. Del Oro would be allowed to dump orange waste on a 3-hectare stretch of degraded land within the park. It was a win for both sides. The company could dispose of its waste at no extra cost, while the park would receive organic matter to improve the soil. To the scientists, this was a smart and elegant plan. Instead of expensive fertilizers or tree planting projects, the natural decay of fruit could bring back life. The rotting peels would block out invasive grasses, break down into compost, and nourish the soil for new growth. The project sounded almost unbelievable. Huge amounts of rotting fruit scattered across barren land, with the hope that nature would work its magic. But Jansen and Hallwax believed strongly in the healing power of ecosystems if given a little help. It was a bold experiment, and no one could predict exactly what would happen. By 1997, the project was underway. Del Oro delivered truck after truck filled with orange peels and pulp. In only 1 year, around 12,000 metric tons of waste were spread across the site, about the same weight as 2,000 adult elephants. The fruit remains were dumped in thick layers that at first glance looked like industrial waste piles. There were no fences or signs, just large mounds of bright orange fruit slowly rotting under the tropical sun. The smell was strong, a heavy citrus odor that drifted through the wind. Flies swarmed, insects arrived in droves, and fungi immediately began breaking down the piles. The site looked chaotic, but to the ecologists, it was a promising start. Decay was not a problem. It was the beginning of transformation. Still, not everyone saw it that way. Nearby farmers and townspeople began to complain. They disliked the smell and worried about health risks. Some feared the waste might contaminate water sources or attract diseases. While locals grumbled, an even bigger challenge came from an unexpected direction. Del Oro's main competitor, a rival juice company named Tico Fruit. Tico Fruit was not pleased that Del Oro had gained free waste disposal and good publicity through the partnership. They launched a legal attack, accusing Del Oro of polluting a protected ecosystem and breaking national regulations. The case quickly grew into a heated public battle. Environmental agencies became involved, media outlets picked up the story, and the once quiet experiment turned into national news. In 1998, only 1 year after the project began, the matter went to court. The ruling went against Del Oro. The company was ordered to stop dumping immediately. Just like that, the experiment was cut short. No more trucks arrived and the site was abandoned. What was left behind looked like a failed project. Piles of decomposing orange peels sat in the heat. The bold idea that had once excited scientists was now mocked as a messy failure. Many believed the site would forever remain a forgotten embarrassment in the corner of the park. Even the ecologists who dreamed it up moved on to other projects, and no researchers returned to study what became of the land. For more than 15 years, the site lay untouched. Rain, sun, and time worked on the rotting waste. No one visited, no one monitored, and no one cared. The story of the orange peel experiment faded from memory, but nature, quietly and steadily, had been at work. In 2013, a Princeton University graduate student named Timothy Truer was researching forest restoration projects in tropical areas. While reading through old scientific papers, he came across a brief mention of the orange peel experiment in a publication by Johnson and Halwax. The note explained that the project had been shut down and no one had revisited the site since. That small detail captured Truer's imagination. Could something unexpected have happened in all those years? Curious, he contacted Johnson and Halwax, who were still active in Costa Rica. Together, they decided to track down the forgotten dumping ground, finding it was far harder than expected. The markers and signs were gone, and the land looked nothing like the barren pasture it once had been. After much searching, they finally located the site, and what they saw left them stunned. Do you think it would still be the way they left it? Let's find out. The unexpected results. What once looked like a hopeless stretch of dry, sunburned land slowly transformed into something extraordinary. The site that had been covered with rotting orange peels was no longer barren. Instead, tall trees stood proudly, their canopies shading the earth below. Thick vines wrapped themselves around trunks, insects buzzed from leaf to leaf, and colorful birds filled the air with movement. The ground, once cracked and lifeless, was now soft, green, and alive. The change was so striking that it seemed more like a scene from a storybook than reality. To capture just how remarkable the transformation was, graduate student Timothy Truer and his team decided to run a formal study. They compared the patch of land treated with orange waste to another nearby area that had not received any peels. What they discovered was astonishing. The land that had been given the orange treatment had far more trees, shrubs, and plant cover. Not only were there more plants, but the variety of species was greater as well. The results were published in 2017 in the journal Restoration Ecology. According to the findings, the orange peel site showed an increase of 176% in above-ground plant growth compared to the untreated area. That means almost 3 times more biomass had developed naturally over the 16 years since the peels were dumped. And this happened without irrigation, without planting, and without any follow-up maintenance. The land had healed itself with just one unusual boost. The reason was clear. The orange peels created the perfect conditions for life to return. At the beginning, the thick blanket of fruit waste smothered the fast-growing grasses that normally overrun damaged pastures. With the grass pushed aside, native seeds buried in the soil had a chance to sprout. Birds and animals also helped by bringing in new seeds. Meanwhile, as the peels rotted, They released vital nutrients that fed the soil. Microbes thrived, and the earth grew fertile again. It was as though nature was given the ingredients it had been waiting for. The soil itself improved dramatically. Years after the waste was dumped, scientists found much higher levels of essential elements like nitrogen, phosphorus, and carbon, exactly what plants need to grow strong. The fruit waste acted as a long-lasting fertilizer, enriching the ground in ways no artificial product could have done so cheaply or effectively. What began as a dumping site had become a rich, fertile home ready to support life for decades. Even more incredible was the chain reaction it set off in the ecosystem. The return of plants created shelter and food, which attracted insects. Those insects drew birds, and the birds carried in more seeds. Small mammals found safe spaces to nest. Layer by layer, the land changed from a lifeless pasture into a complete ecosystem buzzing with activity. And the most surprising part? The entire transformation cost almost nothing. The orange peels were waste from juice production, so the company saved money by not using landfills, and the park gained healthy soil without buying equipment or fertilizers. All it took was the decision to dump the waste and let nature do the rest. Some experts now point to this story as an inspiring example of how organic waste can be used as a low-cost method of capturing carbon from the air. Forests naturally absorb carbon dioxide, and by encouraging their growth with simple organic matter, the process can be boosted without expensive technology. In other words, what was once a problem, tons of fruit waste, became a solution for both disposal and climate concerns. A project that began quietly, was shut down early, and then forgotten, ended up becoming one of the most impressive examples of natural recovery. All it needed was patience, time, and a willingness to try something different. What started as piles of discarded fruit turned into a thriving forest, a living reminder that nature has remarkable ways of bouncing back when given the right support. It leaves us with an important question. If one forgotten experiment could create so much life, why aren't more places around the world trying the same? Lessons from the land. When people think of forests, they usually imagine untouched, ancient places, protected from human hands. Yet the story of Costa Rica's orange peel experiment teaches something different. Sometimes, it is not separation from humans that allows nature to thrive, but rather a surprising partnership. This partnership, however, is fragile. It works only when the balance between human activity and a natural recovery is carefully respected. The forest that grew from discarded fruit waste is a reminder that restoration is not only about science, but also about trust, patience, and timing. The land where the experiment began was not just any patch of ground. It was a tired, overworked piece of earth that had once carried the weight of cattle and pasture. For years, it bore the scars of deforestation and overgrazing. When the orange peels were dumped, they covered those scars. At first, the thick, smelly layer felt more like a burden than a gift. The locals could not see a forest in that mess. To them, it was only rot. But underneath that rot, something quiet was happening. The soil began to breathe again. Every peel carried traces of water, sugars, and minerals that slowly broke down. Worms moved in, followed by other tiny creatures that turned waste into food. Microbes multiplied in ways that had not been possible on the barren land before. What smelled like decay to humans smelled like life to the soil. Over time, this invisible shift created the stage for a miracle. One of the most important lessons hidden in this story is that restoration does not always look beautiful at the start. Nature has its own rhythm, and sometimes that rhythm is messy. Waste, decomposition, and even unpleasant sights and smells can be the first steps toward renewal. If humans expect instant beauty, they may miss the long-term gift growing in silence. This is what makes the orange peel forest so powerful. It asks people to trust what they cannot immediately see. Another lesson lies in how communities view such projects. Many locals were skeptical, and some were angry. Their concerns were valid. To them, it looked like a large company found a clever way to dump its trash for free. Conservation, after all, is not just about trees and soil. It is also about fairness. If people feel exploited or ignored, even the most successful ecological project can be seen as harmful. This means any effort to use farm waste for restoration must be honest, transparent, and respectful of local voices. Without trust, nature may heal, but the relationship between people and land will remain broken. The Costa Rica case also shows that timing matters. The waste was dumped during a period when land restoration was gaining international attention. Global debates about climate change, biodiversity loss, and sustainable farming were heating up. Governments, researchers, and companies were under pressure to find affordable, large-scale solutions. The orange peel forest became a symbol, not just of ecological renewal, but of human creativity in tackling global problems. It showed that solutions can come from the very things society often throws away. Still, this lesson comes with limits. The project was never repeated on the same scale. No long-term funding followed. No widespread policy was built on it. Instead, the forest remained a kind of accident, a natural wonder that sparked curiosity but did not lead to systematic change. Sometimes they begin with waste. What looks like the end of one story can become the beginning of another. The discarded rind of an orange, forgotten and left to rot, can grow into towering trees and new habitats. It is a reminder that nothing in nature is truly wasted. With the right balance, everything can return to life. The global picture. The story of orange peels in Costa Rica might sound like a rare miracle, but in truth, it points toward a much bigger conversation happening worldwide. Around the globe, millions of acres of land lie barren, stripped of life by logging, farming, mining, and urban expansion. At the same time, farmers and food industries generate mountains of organic leftovers every single year. These two problems, wasted land and wasted food byproducts, are like puzzle pieces waiting to be joined. The challenge is figuring out how to fit them together in ways that are safe, fair, and effective. In Africa, for example, vast stretches of farmland have been worn down by decades of overuse. Crops grow weaker, soil nutrients are depleted, and dust storms rise where grasslands once stood. Communities there face food insecurity and environmental decline side by side. What if agricultural byproducts, such as sugar cane husks or maize stalks, could be reused not just as animal feed or fuel, but as tools for bringing life back to tired soil? Research teams are beginning to ask these questions, hoping to unlock solutions that are both low-cost and locally available. In Asia, where rice farming dominates many countries, rice straw and husks often pile up after harvest. Farmers sometimes burn them, sending thick smoke into the air and worsening pollution. Yet scientists are exploring ways to repurpose this waste. Early trials suggest that rice husks can enrich degraded soil when carefully applied, adding organic matter and improving water retention. If managed properly, these discarded layers could slowly turn abandoned fields back into productive land. It may not look as dramatic as Costa Rica's orange forest, but it represents the same principle, seeing waste as a gift rather than a burden. Latin America has its own experiments beyond Costa Rica. In parts of Brazil, coffee husks, cocoa shells, and fruit pulp are being tested as soil amendments. The Amazon, threatened by deforestation, could one day benefit from carefully managed organic waste strategies that boost tree growth in degraded patches. Imagine a system where the byproducts of Brazil's massive coffee and cocoa industries are channeled into the very forests that provide the world with oxygen and biodiversity. It is a vision that blends agriculture, conservation, and community livelihoods. Even in highly industrialized nations, the question of waste is pressing. In the United States, food waste is measured in millions of tons each year. Most of it ends up in landfills, where it produces methane gas, a powerful contributor to climate change. Yet hidden within this waste is untapped potential. What if city compost programs and agricultural byproducts were directed toward large-scale reforestation or grassland renewal? Some pilot projects are already underway, showing that urban waste can be rerouted to rural restoration sites. While the logistics are challenging, the idea itself carries promise. However, the global picture is not just about opportunity. It is also about caution. What works in one country might fail in another. Climate conditions vary, as do soils, local plants, and farming traditions. For instance, citrus peels enriched Costa Rican soil, but in other tropical environments, too much acidity could harm young trees. Coffee pulp boosted tree cover in one test site, but in wetter climates, it might attract harmful fungi. The message is clear: no single recipe can restore the world's lands. Instead, each region needs its own tailored strategy, built on local knowledge and careful monitoring. Another challenge lies in governance. Who decides where and how waste is applied? Who benefits and who bears the risks? These are not small questions. In Costa Rica, the orange peel project collapsed partly because local trust was broken and legal rules were unclear. If governments and companies around the world attempt similar projects, they must ensure transparency, community involvement, and strong environmental safeguards. Without these, what begins as a hopeful experiment could quickly turn into controversy or even ecological harm. Despite these hurdles, the vision of linking food waste with land restoration is gaining momentum. International organizations like the United Nations are pushing for creative solutions to meet reforestation and climate goals. Nonprofits, research groups, and community leaders are exploring ways to combine science with local traditions. Can farm leftovers grow forests? The question seems simple. Why don't we just use farm waste to reforest large stretches of land? On paper, the idea sounds brilliant. Mountains of agricultural leftovers pile up every year. Why not recycle them into something useful, like restoring damaged ecosystems? But the truth is, it's not as straightforward as it first appears. Success depends on many different factors, and the wrong choice of waste could easily turn a solution into a problem. Not all farm waste is the same. Some byproducts, like orange peels, are full of nutrients such as nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium that plants need to grow. Others, however, may alter the soil's pH balance in harmful ways. Instead of enriching the ground, they could poison it, making it harder for plants to survive. That is why projects that use agricultural waste for land restoration require close attention, monitoring, and patience. It's not a magic trick that can be repeated anywhere without thought. Costa Rica's famous orange peel experiment is a perfect example of both the possibilities and the challenges. What happened there amazed the world years later, but at the beginning, not everyone was convinced. In fact, many locals and environmentalists were worried. The sight of truckloads of rotting fruit dumped near a national park looked less like conservation and more like pollution. The odor was overwhelming. Flies gathered in huge numbers, buzzing endlessly around the mounds of fruit. The ground looked messy, and the air smelled sour. To people who lived nearby, it seemed like a backdoor deal for a juice company to get rid of its waste for free, rather than a serious scientific plan. Judging by what they could see and smell, the project hardly looked like an effort to heal the land. But public opinion was only one of the hurdles. Legal challenges soon followed. Del Oro, the juice company behind the experiment, faced strong opposition from its competitor, Tico Fruit. The rival company accused Del Oro of breaking Costa Rica's environmental protection laws by dumping waste on conservation land. They argued that Del Oro was disguising profit as philanthropy, using public land to solve its own disposal problem. The case went to court, and in 1998, the ruling brought everything to a halt. The project was declared unlawful, and Del Oro was ordered to stop immediately. Just like that, the experiment ended after only a year of activity. The site was abandoned, and no further dumping took place. Nobody could know then what results might unfold in the future if the project had been allowed to continue under controlled conditions. Years later, when scientists revisited the site, the transformation was nothing short of stunning. But despite the miracle of rebirth, researchers remain cautious. The project was not designed as a carefully controlled study. It was more of a one-time intervention at a specific location. There were no follow-up trials using other kinds of organic waste, and no official monitoring continued after the shutdown. That means nobody can say with certainty that the same results would occur elsewhere. The truth is, the way ecosystems react to waste products can be unpredictable. Dumping too much citrus waste, for example, can increase acidity in the soil. That harms the microbes that are essential for healthy plant growth. Instead of helping, it can end up blocking recovery. This is why ecologists emphasize that farm waste is not a one-size-fits-all solution. What works in one place might fail in another, depending on soil chemistry, local climate, and the kind of waste being used. Even with these cautions, the Costa Rican project still makes us look at waste differently. Around the world, governments and environmental agencies are under growing pressure to restore land and fight climate change. At the same time, food and farming industries produce endless streams of organic waste: peels, pulp, husks, shells, and more. Most of it is dumped, burned, or left to rot. But what if those leftovers could help rebuild nature? The orange peel experiment has sparked fresh ideas. Inspired by its results, other scientists have begun exploring similar low-cost restoration methods. In 2021, a team from the University of Hawaii ran a new project in Costa Rica using coffee pulp, another byproduct that usually sits in piles. They spread the pulp over degraded pasture land and then waited. Within only 2 years, the changes were dramatic. Tree cover in the treated area jumped to 80%, while the control plot nearby reached only 20%. The invasive African grass that once dominated the land was gone. Soil nutrients improved, and native saplings shot up to heights of about 15 feet in record time. All of this happened without costly technology, irrigation, or replanting programs. Just like with the orange peels, waste had become a surprising tool for recovery. These results hint at something powerful. Farm leftovers may hold the key to bringing life back to damaged ecosystems while also helping with carbon sequestration. Forests naturally capture carbon from the atmosphere, and encouraging their regrowth through organic waste could strengthen this effect. Unlike high-tech carbon capture machines, this method is simple, affordable, and uses materials that would otherwise go to waste. Still, the lesson from Costa Rica is clear. Every project must be carefully planned. Soil conditions, climate, and the type of waste must all be considered. Dumping the wrong material in the wrong way could backfire, causing more harm than good. But when the balance is right, the results can be breathtaking. Imagine a world where heaps of citrus rinds, mountains of coffee pulp, or piles of other organic byproducts no longer rot uselessly, but instead spark the rebirth of forests. Picture degraded landscapes coming alive with trees, insects, and animals, all thanks to waste that once seemed like a problem. The orange peel story shows us that even messy beginnings can lead to magical endings. What started as a controversial dump became a living forest. It challenges us to rethink how we treat what we throw away. If a pile of discarded peels could give nature the push it needed, perhaps other forms of waste also carry hidden potential waiting to be unlocked. And maybe the biggest question of all is this: if waste can grow a forest, what else are we wasting? Let's give a quick answer to that. Wastes that heal and harm the soil. Orange peels once turned a barren patch of land in Costa Rica into a thriving forest, proving that even waste can give life. But they are not alone. Many other forms of agricultural waste hold the same power to restore soil. The challenge, however, is that while these materials can heal, they can also harm when used in excess or without care. Take coffee pulp, for example. Across Latin America, mountains of this waste are left behind during harvest season. When spread evenly across poor land, coffee pulp works like a natural fertilizer. It is full of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, which help plants grow tall and strong. It also smothers invasive grasses that often take over abandoned farmland. In controlled amounts, it can give young forests a head start. Yet, when dumped in thick piles, the pulp quickly ferments. The sugars and acids inside it can lower soil pH, disrupt the balance of microbes, and create toxic conditions that stop plants from growing at all. Sugarcane bagasse, the fibrous remains after juice is extracted, tells a similar story. Farmers often reuse it as mulch, protecting the soil surface from heat and erosion. It slowly decomposes, adding organic matter and improving water retention. Over time, this helps crops thrive in hot climates, but bagasse in large heaps can cause trouble. As it rots, it sometimes produces foul-smelling runoff that seeps into rivers and contaminates nearby water. What starts as a promising soil booster can easily become a source of pollution. Banana plants also leave behind plenty of waste. After harvesting, the heavy stems and broad leaves are often discarded. If managed properly, they enrich soil with potassium and other nutrients essential for growth. However, when abandoned in damp fields, they decay slowly and attract pests like flies and beetles. The process also produces methane, a greenhouse gas that adds to climate change. Rice husks, one of the most common agricultural byproducts in Asia, show both sides too. Mixed into soil, they improve aeration and add silica, which strengthens crops. But many farmers burn them instead, releasing carbon and smoke into the air. What could have been a soil solution often ends up as air pollution. The lesson is clear. Organic waste is powerful, but only when handled with wisdom. In the right amounts and conditions, it restores soil, locks in carbon, and supports new forests. Used carelessly, it can poison water, release harmful gases, or block growth. Just like orange peels, every type of waste has two sides: the gift of renewal and the risk of destruction. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.